Not in the way movies make it sound. Not seductive. Not secretive. It was fragile, almost apologetic, as if she were confessing something she wasn't sure she was allowed to admit. The house around us had settled into that late evening quiet where even the walls seemed tired. A clock ticked in the kitchen. Somewhere outside, a motorcycle passed and faded into distance. I looked at her. My friend's mom, the woman who had once packed us sandwiches for school trips and scolded us for tracking mud through the hallway, and saw something I'd never really seen before. Not authority, not adulthood, just a person, standing in the dim light of her living room, unsure where to put her hands. I swallowed, choosing my words carefully. Just for a little while, I said, "If that's okay." She nodded, relief crossing her face so fast it startled me. As if I had just given permission for something small but necessary. Like sitting down after standing too long. That was how it began. Not with desire, not with drama, but with two people acknowledging the same quiet truth at the same time. Loneliness doesn't announce itself loudly. It waits until the noise of life dies down and then taps you on the shoulder. I hadn't planned to be there that night. I was 27, back in my hometown temporarily after a contract job fell through, sleeping in my childhood bedroom and wondering how adulthood had managed to feel both heavy and empty at once. My friend Daniel, her son, had moved overseas 2 years earlier. We still messaged, but time zones and busy lives had thinned our conversations to occasional check-ins. When she texted earlier that afternoon asking if I could help fix a leaking cabinet door, I almost said no. Not because I didn't want to help, but because going back into that house felt like opening a box labeled before. Before responsibilities multiplied, before people left, before everything got complicated, but something made me go. She greeted me with a tired smile and insisted I take off my shoes like she always had. The house smelled the same, lemon cleaner and old books, but quieter. The laughter that once filled it had thinned into echoes. The cabinet took 5 minutes to fix. We stood there awkwardly afterward, neither of us in a hurry to end the visit, both of us unsure how to extend it. "Would you like some tea?" she asked. I said yes. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, steam rising between us like a fragile bridge. She asked about my work, my plans, my parents. I asked about her garden, about Daniel, about how she was adjusting to having the house to herself. That was when her answers shortened. "I manage," she said, eyes on her cup. People say that when they don't want to explain the weight of the word alone. When the tea was finished, I stood to leave, not wanting to overstay. She walked me to the living room, then stopped, as if unsure whether to say something or let me go. That's when she whispered it. "We're alone." The room didn't change, but something in the air did. A shared understanding surfaced. This wasn't about the house being empty at that moment. It was about months and years of quiet accumulating like dust. I didn't sit back down because she asked. I sat because I understood. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, space between us, the television off. At first, neither of us spoke. Silence can be uncomfortable, but it can also be kind when it's mutual. She broke it first. "I didn't realize how loud life was until it stopped being loud," she said softly. "When Daniel was here, even when he annoyed me, the house felt awake." I nodded. Silence has a sound when you listen long enough. She laughed quietly, surprised. "That's exactly it." She told me about her husband, Daniel's father, who had passed away 8 years earlier. How she'd been strong then, because she had to be. How raising a teenager alone didn't allow much room for falling apart. "And now?" I asked gently. "Now there's room," she said. "Too much of it." She wasn't crying. She didn't need to. There was honesty in her voice that felt heavier than tears. I told her about my own restlessness. About feeling like I was always almost somewhere, almost someone, but never fully settled. About watching friends move forward while I felt stuck in a waiting room with no clock. "It's strange," I said. "You think growing up means you'll feel more certain. But sometimes it's the opposite." She looked at me then. Not as her son's friend, not as a kid who once spilled juice on her carpet, but as an adult standing on uncertain ground, same as her. "You don't stop needing reassurance," she said. "You just get better at pretending you don't." The evening stretched, not in a way that dragged, but in a way that breathed. We talked about books she loved but never had time to finish. About places I wanted to travel but hadn't. About the way grief doesn't shrink, it just changes shape. At some point, the clock chimed softly, startling us both. "Oh," she said, "I didn't realize how late it was." "I can go," I said, immediately. She hesitated, then shook her head. "No, I mean, only if you want to." That was when she said it again, more quietly this time. "We're alone." And I answered the same way. "Just for a little while. If that's okay." It became an unspoken agreement after that night. Not constant visits, not dependency, just permission to exist in the same space without pretending everything was fine. Sometimes I helped with small repairs. Sometimes we shared dinner. Sometimes we just sat, reading in the same room, not talking at all. People might misunderstand that kind of closeness. But there was nothing secret or inappropriate about it. It was the closeness of two people refusing to let isolation swallow them whole. Still, challenges came. Daniel called one evening while I was there. I could hear his voice through the phone, bright and familiar. She smiled while talking to him, but afterward, her shoulders slumped. "I don't want him to worry," she said. "He has his own life now." "Letting someone worry isn't a failure," I said. "It's trust." She considered that. Later, she did tell him, not everything, but enough. Enough to let him know she wasn't invincible. For me, the challenge was different. I worried about boundaries, about perception, about whether I was leaning too much on a place that wasn't mine to lean on. One evening, I voiced it. "I don't want to be in the way," I said carefully. She looked almost offended. "You're not filling a space that belongs to someone else," she said. "You're just sitting beside it." That sentence stayed with me. Over time, things changed, as they always do. I found steady work again. She joined a local book club, something she'd talked about for years but never done. The house slowly gathered new sounds, laughter from guests, music from the radio during the day. One night, as I stood to leave, she hugged me. Not tightly, just long enough. "Thank you," she said, "for not running from quiet." I realized then that the loneliness we'd shared hadn't trapped us, it had connected us long enough for both of us to find our footing again. Life doesn't always need grand gestures or dramatic turning points. Sometimes it just needs someone willing to stay for a moment longer than expected. Sometimes healing begins with a whisper, and an answer that says, "I'm here. For now." And sometimes, that's enough to remind you that being alone doesn't have to mean being abandoned, and that connection, even temporary, can leave a permanent light behind.